Hello, everybody. I hope you are all doing well. Thank you for joining me today. I have had a lovely morning. It's Sunday morning when I'm filming this, and I've just got off of doing a live stream with the wonderful David from Four Corners of the Page and Derry from Derry's Read It Before. We played Bookish Would You Rather over on David's channel. That was so much fun. If anybody tuned into that, thank you so much for watching. That was great fun. I didn't realise that a game of Would You Rather could be so difficult. Some of those questions were really hard, but it was such good fun. But whilst I was up in my little library room, all set up with the camera, I thought, how about I check in and give you guys an update? So we are back, guys. I'm back with my full spoiler vlog of the Age of Madness trilogy, and it's time for book 3, the finale, The Wisdom of Crowds. I have been a really bad vlogger. This is not a vlog. This is just a normal video because I have been so terrible at this. I've had a really busy week and no opportunity to sort of set up my camera or talk about anything anywhere. Work's been really busy. Evenings have been busy. I was out some evenings this week. So it's just been a case of I've just not had the time. So it's not really a vlog as much. It's just me sitting down and chatting. But nevertheless, I'm about to talk to you about the Wisdom of Crowds. Now, the one thing that I have been really bad about, though, is that even though I've been making notes, I did the whole thing like I did in the last vlog with The Trouble with Peace, where I thought, oh, I wonder how far through I am. Guys, I am on the last section, so I probably have about 3.5 hours of this book left. It is all happening. This is insane. Oh, by the way, if you can hear like lots of moving around, Ernie is just sat right next to me. He's like sleeping next to me, but he keeps on moving around. The Wisdom of Crowds. It's so good. If you've been watching any of these vlogs, which if you have, thank you so much for watching, because I know they're just not, they're probably not that great, but thank you so much if you have been tuning in. Guys, if this tells you anything, the fact that I've been making notes, but have gone so far before updating you, it just goes to show how engrossed in this story I have been. I am obsessed with this trilogy. This is an incredible trilogy. It's Joe at some of his finest. Now, I've already had a few questions from people saying, oh, what do you prefer, Age of Madness or the First Law trilogy? Guys, I don't like to compare at the moment because at the moment they're all just god tier. But I will if I have an answer, I will give my answer after I've finished. But honestly, at the moment, I love them both for such different reasons, even though they're in the same world with similar characters. I love them for both for different reasons. So, oh my gosh. Anyway. I am going to run through as many updates as I possibly can. So I have probably got about 6 pages worth of updates that I have been writing down because obviously I'm so far into the book now. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm so far through. I'm just going to be ranting, like just reading these notes out to you. But honestly, I'm so excited. So where we left off in the Trouble with Peace, we now have Orso has come back. So we had the big battle, the big war that was kind of fought between Orso, with the Union and with Leo and Savine. And so they were kind of head to head with Stour Nightfall and all of that. And also was successful. And he came back at his sort of big triumph. So this was at Stop and Beck. And he sort of comes back to the Union only to find, because when we left, the story in The Trouble with Peace, we found out that, Superior Pike, or Inquisitor Pike, now then Archlector Pike was actually the Weaver. But we know that the Breakers and the Burners did not come to the war. They did not join in with the war. So when Orso returns with his army to from Stoppenbeck, they return to find that Valbeck has completely fallen. Lots of other places have fallen to the Breakers. And this is why they weren't present. It's because they knew, very similarly to Ricker with Stour, they knew that it was unprotected, it was undefended, and they could really just wreak havoc. So Orso has come back and he's found that Valbeck has fallen to an uprising and the Breakers have infiltrated the capital. So they've infiltrated Adua, infiltrated the Union. Oh no, it's not great. So poor Orso, bless him, after coming back from being quite successful, has not got anything good to come back to. So we just looking at the uprising. So we have 3 people in this book that are, and obviously in the other books too, but 3 characters that are predominantly leading in the uprising. So we have Pike, who was Superior Pike, and now, as I say, is touch Lecter Pike as well, and has been revealed to be the Weaver. Okay. So he's very mysterious. He's a very interesting character because even though he seems to be very pro-uprising, he's also he holds himself back a little bit. Like, he never quite fully commits. It's very interesting. And then you have Superior Reasonau, and Reasonau is very much like going for like the moral. He's like, come on, we need to fix it. Everything needs to be made right again. Everything needs to be made right again. We've been, treated awfully. It's so corrupt. Everything's bad. So he's very much like moral justice, moral high ground. And then we have Judge. She is crazy. Can I just say, Judge is crazy. She is honestly terrifying as a character. She just wants to kill everybody. She's not even worried about justice. She just wants to cause utter havoc. You know how in The Dark Knight, when Alfred says to Batman, to Christian Bale, he says, some men just want to watch the world burn. That reminds me of Judge. She's one of those. She just wants to watch the world burn. She's an unhappy, unsatisfied lady. Okay. And she just wants to kill everybody. She wants to just kill everyone in her path. But those three, Pike, Reasonau, and Judge, are the three sort of people that are mainly leading the rebellion, the uprising, and the great change. And that's something that keeps getting mentioned a lot throughout the books. And everything has been overrun. It's complete chaos. And this also includes the House of Questions. So they take over the House of Questions. And it's awful. It's not great. Also, bless his heart, he surrenders himself to the Breakers. He knows he has not got a chance. So he surrenders himself. But Yorosulfa and Tunney, Sergeant Tunney, Corporal Tunney, can't remember his title, have escaped. They've managed to get away. So I feel like that's notable information. I feel like that's something that I needed to hold on to. And obviously we had the Weaver was revealed, but also at this point had not had the Weaver revealed to him. But now the Weaver has been revealed to also, he now knows that it's Pike. And then we're just going back to the north for a bit. So we're just going to go back to the north. All sorts has been going on in the north. Rika has been sat on Scarling's chair because she took over Scarling's hall, and she has a sort of side character, Corlith. Corlith is sort of not her right-hand woman, not quite like Izern, but Corlith is one of Rika's friends, and she's sort of helping. Izern doesn't trust Corlith. There's a few interactions where Izern approaches Rika and sort of says, I don't like her. I don't trust her. There's something fishy about her, but I'll come back to that. Then Rika has, obviously, we know from the last book, has got Stour. Clover and Shivers had slashed the back of his knees so that he can't walk, and she has locked him in a cage. So Rika has locked him inside a cage in Scarling's hall, near Scarling's chair, and she's locked him. It was quite interesting as well, a little bit of a full circle moment, circle of the world. It was a bit of a full circle moment because she locks him into a cage that the Nail, the character of the Nail, Stour had put the Nail's father into that cage and kept him in it. So I thought that was an interesting moment. It was a bit like a full circle, her and the Nail sort of like getting revenge on him. So she locks Stour in a cage. And also something notable as well is that Clover takes Bethod's chain, so Stour's granddad's chain, from Stour and gives it to Rika, and she refuses it. She's like, no, like, think about all the people that have worn that and where it's got them. Like, Bethod's dead. Stour's dad, oh gosh, not Blackholder, his uncle, sorry, Cottelder's brother, I'll put his name on the screen, is dead. Now Stour is like, in my power. Like, it's obviously not a good sign. So she gives it back to Clover, which I liked. It shows that she's not power hungry. I mean, we knew that already. Also, Rika and the Nail start getting frisky and have intimate relations. And there was a moment where I was listening to the audiobook of this on my way to work and just giggling away as a really awkward, intimate scene. We got some of the Joe Abercrombie smut, which is what, I live for it. It was a great moment. It was interesting because when they were having their intimate relations, she covers Stour's cage because Stour's in the room with them, and she covers his cage with, like a blanket or something. And the Nail is sort of asks her, are you sure you want to, have our moment now when he's here? And she sort of says yes, actually, because he always said he was going to witness me being hurt and everything. So now he gets to listen as I have fun, and I thought, I was like, yeah, hand it back to him, because Stour was terrible. But there's also a moment where a few sort of scenes after this, but just keeping them together, the Nail and Isern have a very, very public dispute with each other. A very public dispute. They sort of storm out of her bedroom and have a massive argument, and he leaves. And it's really public, and it's kind of, everybody has seen it. So that was kind of notable. And at this moment, I was also wondering, where's Calder? Black Calder. We know he's alive. He's got to be around somewhere. So that was kind of in the back of my mind. But just going back to the Union, we have Vic. Vic is now sort of working with Pike. We know what she's like. She sort of moves sides to sort of stick with the winners, and she's now working with Pike, feeling like she's got no other option. And she is now Chief Inspector rather than an Inquisitor. And because they've got new names for everything, we've sort of established at this point that the new enemy of the Union and the Great Change, the enemy is now the Banks of Valent and Bulk, which technically we know is Biaz. And this is a really interesting moment for me when reading the books, is because the whole time I think anybody that would be reading this, Biaz is such an interesting character, but I don't think we ever really stand with him. But at the moment, the uprising is going against Biaz in a way. It's going against the Banks. And we don't really side with them, but I also definitely don't find myself siding with the uprising, or the people that are leading the uprising, at least. So it's such an interesting contrast of morality and motive. I love it. It's great. Leo is, oh my goodness. He's always been a little bit insufferable. He starts out okay, but now he's getting pretty insufferable. He's become really quite prominent and powerful because he basically tries to try his image, and he wants to show himself as being intelligent and a leader and all of this sort of thing. And he publicly gives up the Dan in his name. So, you know how it's like San Dan Glocta, Sabine Dan Glocta. The Dan in these names is in the Union kind of represents a hierarchy, a position of authority, of respect. A bit like a lordship, kind of, but it's like, or like, it's like aristocratic. It's like, it shows that you're a member of the aristocracy. And he publicly gives it up. It's like, oh, well, you can just take the Dan out of my name and know that I'm one of the people. And everybody's like, oh, that's nice. He's getting rid of that. We should trust him. So that was interesting. But he's kind of trying to be Sabine and follow in her footsteps, which is really interesting because it obviously just shows how intelligent she is and how respected she is. That he's kind of trying to sort of remove the superior side, the aristocratic side, and be one of the people. And we know in the past, in the last book, Sabine was trying to do that when she was getting Swarbrick to kind of change the narrative around her. So Leo's trying to do the same thing. He's trying to do it for himself. Also, a little update. Sabine was obviously heavily pregnant. She has given birth to twins. And I like this. I do quite like this. She names them Ardi after her mum, which I love. And she names her other son Harrod. Now, Harrod was Harrod the Great. So he was the first king of the Union. So I was thinking at the time, is this a little, first king of the Union? Are we looking at some echoes here? Is it looking like little Harrod is going to be king at some point? So, it's just one of those things. Going back to Ricker. So Ricker, also a notable thing. I'm just going to grab my coffee because I can see it on my shelf back there. I brought it up with me. It's piping hot. And I'm wondering if it's cool enough for me to have a sip of. Getting down with my demons as per usual. Let's see. How are we doing? Oh, that's lovely. So going back to Ricker. Something that's really notable about Ricker at this moment and is worth remembering is that Ricker's long eye doesn't work. Now, I don't know how true it is. So Ricker, a few people sort of know, like Isern and Shivers are pretty convinced that Ricker's long eye doesn't work. Ricker has been trying to convince everybody that it does work and has been using that to manipulate people. So I'm not actually 100% sure, but Ricker's long eye doesn't work. And that's something that we're kind of told throughout this and we kind of need to hold on to. But there's a moment between Ricker and Clover. So Clover ends up going to meet Black Calder. So Rika sends Clover to meet Black Calder because she sort of thinks he's not really that trustworthy, but if there's anybody here who could probably talk Black Calder around to maybe establish like a partnership or just some kind of neutrality between us, it might be Clover. And so she sends Clover to go and meet with Black Calder. And though they do not trust each other, Clover and Black Calder, Clover has no choice but to switch sides, because Black Calder basically says, well, I'm not going to just let you go back and tell her all of this information. I think there is an element of Calder that is very much like he wants the North to be right again and to stop having these endless problems. And I think he sees it that if I don't take over or if I don't do something, there's just going to always be unrest in the North. So, and Calder also states to Clover that he thinks he's going to win because he's got a good chance, which is because he has recruited Stander the Barrows, which is a bit like, there was another character who I wrote down the name of, Stranger Come Knocking. There was another character called Stranger Come Knocking who is very similar. He's from the same area as Stranger the Barrows. He's a bone man from the Crinner. So Calder has recruited Stranger the Barrows, which is a man from the north of the Crinner, very similar to Stranger Come Knocking from previous novels. And he's a bone man. So he's quite ruthless, a warrior, intimidating. So Calder has recruited him to help him. Also, just linking to Rika, I mentioned earlier about Isern and Rika having a disagreement about Corlith. And also Rika having her disagreement very publicly with the Nail. Well, she also has a very public disagreement with Isern Ifael. So Isern Ifael and Rika fight because Isern thinks that Rika has been making really poor choices, that she's not been doing things in the North the way she should be. She's been lying about the long eye and, and it working and things like that. And also the fact that Rika has very carelessly just ignored her information about Corlith. Isern is really worried about Corlith. Basically, Corlith, Rika's friend, she's going off every now and then to her grandma's house, and nobody else goes in really, apart from her brothers. And every now and then they go and they take these like wine casks away to sell them, and then they come back. But it's very like they don't really mix with anybody else. And Isern is really suspicious. She's like, well, Corlith goes there all the time. We never see the grandma come out. And when we do see people leave, it's the brothers, and they always just go to sell their wine, and then they don't interact or do anything else. And she's concerned about it, and Isern ignores her. Oh, sorry. Rika ignores Isern's issues with it. So they have a massive argument, again, publicly, in front of everybody, which is really interesting. So that was just something else that I thought was notable. Going back to Leo and Sabine. So Leo and Sabine had quite a big chat about sort of just generally both of them making bad choices. Leo very much thinks that Sabine is, always so righteous. And she sort of says, well, no, we've both made terrible mistakes, but we've always sided with each other. But they talk about their poor choices in allies and how they were not to be trusted. And she asks him about Durand and the possibility of him being a good ally because he's such a strong and loyal friend to Leo. And Leo and Durand fell out in the last book because Leo at Car Dottie's House of Leisure saw Durand and, what's the other character? Glarwood having intimate relations. Leo saw that, and then they had a massive falling out. And Leo kind of made out that it's because he didn't personally agree with that kind of thing. However, Leo then starts to acknowledge in his sort of inner monologue that he has quite a physical reaction to thinking of Durand in a kind of sensual manner. And when he has like images of him in his head, if he thinks about Durand in that way, he has like a physical reaction to it. And so we start to get the sense that Leo actually does quite like Durand and has a physical sort of, not obsession, but an admiration to him and maybe a bit of a crush. So that was interesting, but he very much tries to cover that up and not tell Sabine about that, of course. But there's something really interesting happening to Leo and Sabine in this book. And it's obviously, it's been creeping. I think it's been echoed throughout all three books, but it's really starting to take hold in book 3, where they're both really changing. Leo is sort of becoming more like Sabine was, where he's now becoming really cutthroat and short and trying to be so clever about everything and trying to control everything. And he's seemingly more switched on, even though he's not. He's not more switched on. He's still very naive. But Sabine is now a mum, and so her priorities have completely changed. She's no longer worrying about profits or, what business she can take over next. She's sort of realised, my station has changed. Everything has changed. I'm a mum now. I've got 2 babies. I need to look after them. So her sole purpose now is protecting her children, living a more gentle life, focusing on them and their survival, because obviously everything is so heated. And also, Leo is kind of now becoming more of the politician. He knows that he can't be a warrior. He knows he's missing his leg. He's got still a really damaged arm. He knows he can't fight. So he thinks, I'll take the other approach and I'll try to be more of a politician like Sabine. And he expresses support with Riesenau's uprising. He supports specifically to Riesenau, not to Pike and to Judge, because they're all together, but not together, if you know what I mean. But he supports Riesenau. And Sabine is definitely sort of moving away from her sort of profits and exploitation, and she starts helping the public. She starts buying coal and investing her money in buying coal to give to poor people, to give to other people. She invests in buying cakes and helping bakeries so that she can give food to poor people around her and families that are struggling. And yeah, her image is changing, so it's very interesting. I like the kind of the inverse of them two, the kind of inverse that is taking place. Going back to Orso, who I must say, he's obviously in this book a lot, but he's nowhere near in it as much as I want him to be. I feel like I miss Orso, but bless him, he's in a very precarious situation. He's being kept as a prisoner by Judge and, the uprising. And at one point, Hildy passes him a little note, and the little note is, she creates a little ruse and passes it to him. And it contains a note which is from Forrest Tunney and Bremer Dangorst. Oh, I love that guy. And they basically have expressed that they all still support him. They sort of write in the note, you've still got friends, we're all still here, we're going to try and help you, which I got so excited by. I was squealing. I was like, yes, some people are still out there to help. Also, bless his heart, I just love him so much. Vic. I am really liking her change in this book as well. She's kind of always been there, but kind of because she's so switchy-sidey, you kind of think, even though in book 2 she started to really help the characters that I like, it's definitely very much morally she flips between, but she does generally now seem to err on the side of what I seem to be, because as I say, all of these characters are flawed, but what I deem to be the good characters, the characters that I like, she now starts to not support Pike. She very much questions him. She doesn't trust him. And Vic takes matters into her own hands, and she essentially offers Leo and Sabine 4 seats in the closed council. She's working very closely to Pike, so she's got quite a lot of power. She offers Leo and Sabine 4 seats in the closed council for them to not stand against Orso, for them to reinstate, because she believes that Orso needs to be reinstated. He's the king. He still is the king at this point, but she thinks that he needs to be reinstated in all of his glory. He's currently been kept prisoner. So Sabine and Leo ask Durand for help as well, because they kind of tenuously agree to it. Sabine is a lot more up for it than Leo. Obviously, Leo does not like Orso, but Sabine speaks to Leo and sort of says, Durand, we've spoken about this. He would be a good ally. So they offer Durand a seat on the closed council and they offer him the 4 seats and ask him for help. And he agrees. He agrees to help them. So at this point, we kind of go full circle again, because Sabine ends up having to tell Leo the truth. So she tells Leo the truth about her relationship with Orso and the fact that they share a father, because Sabine knows that other people know. She knows that other people know. She knows it's going to come out at some point. So she tells him, and to her surprise, he is not completely horrified by this information, because he establishes the fact that their children are essentially next in line to the throne. their eldest, well, no, they're not their eldest, their male heir, Harrod, is heir to the throne. And you can see the cogs in Leo's head are just turning at this point, thinking, oh, my son is the heir to the throne. This is fantastic. So that was interesting. And then at this point in the background, Forrest, Leo, and Durand and Bromodan Gorst, they're all sort of gathering their armies to break up the Breakers and the Burners and to sort of dispel them, and they march on Adua. So, going back to Ricker, lots is happening with Ricker in this book. I really like the North. The North is just my favourite. Black Calder approaches. He comes. So basically, this is something that happens. So Ricker very much, she talks to everybody around her and sort of says, we need to get Calder to come to us. We are in the place where it's going to be harder to attack us. We are in Carleon. We have Scarling's Hall. We have his chair. We have all of this, defense. We need Calder to move. We need something to drive him to move to us. So he ends up doing that. Also, I don't know if I ever noted this, but Clover switched sides and supported Calder because he knew he didn't have a choice. Calder would have killed him. So, but Black Calder does. He makes the move. He comes to Carleon and he sees Stour with his legs cut. He says to Ricker that he will actually just allow her to have Carleon. And this bit I really liked. So I had to put this in as a little nod to Logan. But Ricker said, "Guess you've got a knife, ain't you?" And Shiver says, "You can never have too many." And I just love that as like a little nod to Logan. But she says yes, and she agrees, and she says, "Yeah, to Black Calder, I'll give you Stour back. You can have him." She tells Shivers to cut his ropes, to cut Stour's ropes, which she does, and then she takes the knife from Shivers and stabs Stour in the throat, and then just chucks him over. And I could not believe it. I thought she was going to leave it. I thought she was going to give him back, but she didn't. She killed him. And Clover has a moment. This is, again, another full circle moment where Clover has this moment where he remembers he was there the day that Logan and Bethod, Logan fought Fenris the Feared and defeated Bethod. So he remembers that he had seen Bethod thrown from the walls of Carleon, and now he's just watched his grandson Stour be thrown from it as well. So there's there was like another full circle of the world moment, which I just, the echoes. Ricker approaches Corlith. So after all of this has happened, she approaches Corlith and she asks her about her family. So she sort of says, "Your nan, your brothers, what's going on here?" And she points out that Corlith's granny gets a lot of visitors. That's something I forgot to mention earlier. And that Isernafell has been suspicious and she has actually been sending people to spy. Now, this is why I noted that Isern's bust up with Ricker and the nail, both of them were written in such a way, I forgot to mention this earlier, but both of their arguments, their bust-ups, were written in such a way that their bust-ups came out of nowhere. They just happened. So as we were listening to them, or as I was listening to them, or as you're reading it, just happens. Just comes out of nowhere. It's not been really that pre-warned. Isern's was a little bit pre-warned because we knew that she and Ricker were having some disagreements. But it came quite quickly. The one with the nail just happened. There was no warning. And I did question it a little bit. And the fact that it was so public. Turns out that the reason Ricker's argument with Isern was so public was because Corlith witnessed it. So when it's pointed out that Isernafell had sent some spies to watch Corlith and her brothers, it's pointed out that she had 3 brothers who were brewers, and they would take ale from the house to Currahome. Currahome is where Black Calder has been holding out. And then Ricker's men stopped one of the brothers and they looked inside the keg to see if there was beer brewed in there. And there was none. It was just all a ruse. So Shivers had questioned him and he basically said that he was taking all of Ricker's. So Corlith would go to the Nan's house, would write down everything or tell them everything about what Ricker had been doing, what she had been up to, what her plans were, anything that had happened. And then the brothers Corliss brothers would take Ricker's movements, Ricker's ideas, Ricker's plans, and take them with this ruse of like selling ale and take them to Black Calder in Currahome. And this includes things like Issa Fail has left her and is not on her side anymore. She's lost her long eye. She can't do all this stuff anymore. And also things like the Nail and her had a massive argument and he's left and taken all of his men. They were taking all of this information to Black Calder. So this is why Black Calder attacked, because he thought she was in such a vulnerable position, and she wasn't. So it turns out that the Nail and the bust up with the Nail and the bust up with Issa were complete ruses. Black Calder would have essentially assumed that Ricker was losing support and that she was more undefended than defended. So it was all a ruse. But Ricker says that she had seen it coming. So I'm just wondering, so it must have been that the long eye, her losing it, that was all a ruse too, but it had to be believable. So they had to build it up for so long. Clever. Anyway, at this point, Hardbread has been hiding in the woods and Shivers blew a horn, and then so they charge and they take all of Calder's men. The Nail had gone off with his men and come back to support with Hardbread and everything. And they take Black Calder's men. They take them, they kill them. And also someone else turns up, which was interesting. So a witch whose head was stitched together with golden wire, Cowrib, she turns up and gets Calder's men, and she's brought her Shanker with her, and because she wants their bones, but probably to make more Shanker. So she raises an army of Shanker to fight Calder's men, which was pretty fun. That was pretty badass. That was a fun moment. But then after the battle, which was a great battle, by the way, Issa and Ricker are reunited, and Clover comes to Ricker and is holding Black Calder. He's got him. And there was a moment that Ricker, there was a phrase that said, I wrote it down, there was no strength like looking weak. So that was Ricker's plan all along, was to just look weak, look like she was crumbling under the pressure. And then she said, Bethod's line ends with you, which it's just such a good moment. But there was a moment and I gasped. So she says, Bethod's line ends with you. And Calder says, so you don't see everything. Dun, dun, dun. But all I keep thinking is, where's Baez? Because at this point, Baez has been poking around in all different parts of the corners of the world, talking to people. And he has met with Black Calder. We know this. Has Baez gone to go and get someone from the north? Where's Logan? That's what I want to know. And Liam wants to know this question as well. Where's Logan? Is it something to do with him? I don't know. But anyway, Shiver's sword kills Calder. He kills him. Black Calder is no more. And everybody cheers Black Ricker, because Black Calder was the name that was stolen from Calder by Calder from Black Dow. So it's now Black Ricker, and she's now in charge. And then we enter the final part. So Savine. But Savine goes on trial. She is on trial for going against her crimes against the Union and her exploitation and her slavery to gain profits, everything like that. She's on trial. And Spillian Swarbrick, the guy who wrote all of the little, in the last book, Savine, is a beautiful woman of the people, and she was she was attacked and survived, all of that, to change her image. Spillian Swarbrick is the man that is stood next to Judge, putting her through the ringer and charging her, or issuing the charges. But she's put on trial, but before, she makes herself look like a complete pauper. She wears white and very basic clothes. She takes all of her jewellery off. She's not wearing her jewels. And she takes Ardy and Harrod with her, so her babies. And they sort of say, no, you can't have them. She says, are you going to take them from me? They're my children. And she breastfeeds in front of everybody. And it's definitely not saying she never lies necessarily, but she's definitely obviously trying to really change her image and get people to just trust her and like her. And rightfully so. But the people sympathise with her. And Judge and Swarbrick see right through her. They sort of say, we know this is all an image. We know that you're just pretending, you're not really like this. and she fights her corner. And to be fair, the thing I like about Sabine is nothing that she says is a lie. Nothing she says is a lie. She doesn't lie to them at all. But they send her to her death anyway. They send her to her death regardless, but also stops them. It's like, stop. Because he's kind of like in the background and about to be tried as well. He says, stop. I've got lots of confessions to make. Can I make my confessions? And Judge is like, yeah, we want to hear this. So he starts sort of like confessing and saying all this stuff, and bless him, he's like stalling. And when he's in the midst of this, he's also sentenced to death with Sabine. But at this point, Gorst, so Bremerdan, Gorst, Durand and Forrest have been getting their army, and they infiltrate. And also, I just think it's really important to note at this point that Gunnar Broad has been kind of working very closely to Judge, and they've had a bit of a physical relationship. That was an awkward chapter. So I just think that's just important to note here. But it all goes down. They all have a big fight. But anyway, Judge takes Sabine and takes Orso, and she pulls Sabine up to the tower and is about to throw Sabine and Orso off the tower. But they fight, and Judge ends up falling to her death, and Sabine falls too, but Gunnar Broad grabs her and picks her and grabs her and stops her from falling, and also is like screaming behind, don't let her fall, don't let her fall, because he still loves her. Oh, it's so sweet. And when they pull her back up, also hugs Sabine and says, I've got you. Oh, and I'm questioning myself, because I'm like, actually they're half brother and half sister, but their love for each other is the sweetest thing in the world. Anyway, also tries to make peace with Leo at this point. Leo's like, oh, you saved my wife. That's great. But, but he says, I'll make everything right. I'll dispel the closed council. We'll get rid of it. We won't have one anymore. We'll make a new union, one for us. And Leo refused Orso's handshake. And then he goes all evil. So Leo stabs Forrest. This is awful. I got so angry in this moment. And Durand takes a dagger to Orso. Leo! Oh, I just want to wring his neck. Leo says that he was putting an end to the Great Change. He doesn't support it anymore. He wants a new union. And he basically uses his son, Harald, as a claim to the throne. My son is the heir. And he says, long live King Harald II. So there you go. The prediction was there. And then we have, just going back to Rika, so she plans to go to Adua to make amends with Leo, because she kind of did betray him and Sabine, but she now has also heard, Shivers has told her, because Shivers has been sort of about doing, go and look about, and he's sort of said, I've heard quite a lot about Leo, and that he's kind of entering the dark side, and he's not doing very well at the moment. So Rika, rather than killing Corleth, she actually uses her. She uses Corleth to spy on Adua. So she said, you're a spy. Go and spy on them. Tell me what's going on. And she doesn't. And she also announces to Clover that she does not trust him anymore to go and do it. That's why she sends Corleth. Also, Leo and Sabine, that I forgot to mention, is that Leo suggests removing Orso completely. They sort of ended up supporting Vic in saying, we'll reinstate the throne. But Leo's whole point was, no, we will reinstate the throne, but not with Orso, with my son, Harald. So he suggests to put King Harald, little Harald, on the throne, or as king in waiting, but that he and Sabine will be sort of king and queen and regent. And Sabine is against this. She kind of sticks with it. She's like, sure. But she is then threatens Swarbrick, the guy that wrote all this stuff about her, that has been useful, but who clearly put her on trial with Judge and was awful. But she keeps him alive, and she says to Vic, Vic says, why don't you just kill him? And she says, well, no, if you know anything from my father, you try and use somebody for what they're worth before you kill them, or, don't kill them whilst they're still useful. So she wants to use Swarbrick to create more propaganda for her, and turn her into the mother of the Union, the mother of the nation, this very innocent, pure person. So that is where I am up to. And I've written down some potential predictions. So I've mentioned this one, but where is Baez? Where is Baez? What is he doing? And is he going to get Logan? That's my question. It's Liam's question as well at the moment, is just, is Baez going to get Logan? The Bloody Nine. Maybe he could do something. So I'm just wondering. So then it makes me wonder if Rika then travels to Adua with Shivers, and Baez has got Logan and takes him to the Union, does that fight in the circle, is that going to be Logan and Shivers? Are they going to finally have their big fight? I don't know. And my other thing that I'm also curious about, / prediction, a curiosity / prediction. We still have no sign of Glokta and Ardy. So we know that Glokta resigned and he went away, but there's just an inkling in me that just thinks he's not done yet. Like, surely that can't be, for us as a reader, that cannot be the last that we hear of Old Sticks. He's too big of a character for me. He's too notorious. He's too clever. He can't have just gone away. And Ardy's gone, and the attention is drawn to it quite a lot in this, where they sort of say, "Oh, any sign of your mum?" To Savine, she's like, "No, we don't know where she is." Where is she? Where's Ardy? Has she gone to go and get her husband? Has she gone to go and get Glokta? Sabine's in trouble. I don't know. Those are my questions. But I will be back. I will be back at some point with another update when I have finished, because I only have a few hours left. Guys, that was a huge ramble. I'm so sorry. But honestly, this is just amazing, and I'm in awe of Joe Abercrombie, and I never want this world to ever leave my brain. I will be back very soon with some more updates when I have finished. Excuse the really bad appearance and the fact that the air fryer is going on in the background. It's really early in the morning, I'm just doing yoga, but I'm listening to the audio, and Vic is with Pike, and he's just said, "Let me introduce you to the Weaver." And she said, "Aren't you the Weaver?" And he's like, No, I've just borrowed that title from a better man. He borrowed the Arch-Lector title from another man. Glokta. Is Glokta the Weaver? Oh my gosh. Good evening, fellow Silversaints. I hope you are well. It is Monday evening when I am filming this. Hi, hello. I hope you are having a lovely start to your week. It is nighttime. As I say, it's Monday evening. I had to put my ring light on. I'm so sorry for the terrible lighting, but I had to put my ring light on because it's pitch black outside. But I just had to take the opportunity to come and give you my updates because I have finished The Wisdom of Crowds. I finished it today. When I got to work, I had about 20 minutes of it left. I was listening to it in the car and this morning. And when I finished it and I got to work, there was about 20 minutes left. So I listened to the last sort of 20 minutes or so whilst I was sort of checking my emails at work and everything. And my goodness, I am in awe, is all I can say. I am in utter awe of what Joe Abercrombie has crafted and what he has been able to create with the entire First Law universe. But this series is special. There is something so special about this series. And if there's anything that I can tell you, or if anything tells you how much I loved this series, let this be it. I took my day at work to kind of mentally process the Age of Madness trilogy. But on my afternoon walk, I went straight back and started listening to The Blade itself again, because I just can't. You can't expect me to finish the Age of Madness trilogy and not go right back and just not start it all again, because how could you? How could you? I think it's totally normal. I think it's totally normal to want to go all the way back to the beginning where it all started. And so I've gone back and I've started The Blade itself again. I think it's self-care, it's healing. I'm going full circle with the Circle of the World. I'm doing what Joe Abercrombie would want me to do. I want my life to be narrated by Stephen Pacey. I'm not ready to let this world go. It's so good. Anyway, I'm going to go through all of the updates of the things that happened in the last section of the book. Oh, it was so good. It was so good. I can't even begin to tell you how good it was. I've got my cup of Twinings sleep tea. Oh no, you can't see it, wrong side. Sleep tea. It's like vanilla and lavender and other bits and bobs. I don't need much to make me sleepy, to be fair. I'm quite a sleepy person in general, but so that I can settle down into the evening. But I'm going to tell you everything that happened in the last few sections of the book and my final thoughts. Can I just take a moment? I'm not going to necessarily, by the way, this is just going to be an amalgamation of thoughts. Not everything I necessarily say is going to be in order. I kind of was making random notes throughout the day of things that just popped into my head that I wanted to talk about. So none of these things are in order. So from the last thing that I updated you on, but one thing I really want to draw some attention to is I felt like one character really had to be mentioned, and they're not a main character, but they are a character that reappears throughout the series. Can we just take a moment to applaud Bremer Dangorst? Bremer Dangorst. I love this character so much. He's such an interesting character because even though he doesn't always play such a huge part, he's always there, and he's oddly reliable. He plays quite a large part in the Heroes is where he plays his biggest part, I would say, especially with his kind of unrequited love for Finri Danbrock. But there's something I really like about Ramadan Gorst. Stephen Pacey's narration of him gives him a very high-pitched, well, he is described like this in the book, a very high-pitched kind of almost sort of like an infant. He has quite an infantile voice, and he sort of comes across as very childish, but he's also a complete like monster of a warrior, and he's so skilled and talented, and he's just like a killing machine. And I just love that kind of opposing side, those sort of opposing sides to him, that sort of contrast of his personality mixed with his physical ability. But Bremer Dangorst has his moment. He has his time to shine. He supports Orso throughout and just looks after him. Just how he was always protecting Orso. And he had his final moment. And we had to say goodbye to Gorst, which was actually quite a bittersweet moment for me. It was quite interesting because he kind of went down in a blaze of glory. But alas, he was not killed in one-on-one combat, which he probably would have won at. He was killed by a rogue arrow to the face. It kind of reminded me of like the story of 1066. It's not the story, the history of the Battle of Hastings in 1066. I imagine like when King Harold, when Harold had the arrow to the eye, the infamous story, made me think of that. But Bremer Dangorst is gone, is no more. It was a really sad moment for me. I really like Gorst, especially because I feel he was generally trying to stand up to do the right thing. Oh, I just had to take a moment. Applause for Bremer Dangorst. I love Joe Abercrombie with all of my heart. I'll declare my love to him. I love him. I love this world. I love the characters. This is one of my favourite series of all time. In fact, I think it's in my top 3 series of all time. And quite at the moment, it's literally my favourite series of all time at the moment, I would say, because of recency bias. But there is one thing that I'm not going to forgive Joe Abercrombie for. And that is how he ended Orso's life. Orso is my favourite character from this series specifically. I absolutely adore him. I feel like it's very similar to Giselle, where from the first Or trilogy, where he does go on such a journey, but Orso's journey is so much more complete than Giselle's. Giselle starts as this is Orso's father. Giselle starts off as such an insufferable, naive, self-obsessed, vain narcissist, and he's just so childish and just so pompous. And then he goes on a journey where he starts to improve, and he shows he can be really good at leadership, and he starts to show honour. And then Baez corrupts him, and we see him start to descend into sort of Baez's ways as like a puppet, as like a slave. And also goes on a bit of a similar journey where he starts off insufferable and annoying, but always weirdly likeable. He's so much more likeable than his dad was. But yet he goes on such a journey and really proves himself, and he's so honourable, and he really wants to do the right thing. And he never becomes corrupt. He's never corrupt. He always stands to do the right thing. And so you see his arc. It's the arc that his dad never got to fulfill. But he's ultimately destroyed by Rika. Essentially, she's the person that ultimately sort of destroys him and hands him over, which I thought I didn't see coming, but it does make sense for Rika to do that. But I didn't see it coming, and it was heartbreaking. But what hurts me the most about this is that Orso needed to be killed because he was a threat to the sort of the new regime, in terms of he would have always continued fighting, and he stood in the way of the new way of things. And I just adore him. I just absolutely adore him. And also something that was quite poetic about his ending was the fact that he was killed by hanging. And, his famous line, "I hate bloody hangings." The fact that his first scene is him watching hangings. to then his last scene being hanged. Very poetic, Joe. Very poetic. But Joe, I'm not willing to forgive you for that. I'm not willing to forgive that because also was my favourite. There was a huge reveal, the big moment, the big reveal. Glokta is revealed to be the Weaver, and he reveals to Savine that it was actually Ardi's plan, that it was her plan. Oh, I forgot how great they are as a couple. Just turns out this whole time he has been sort of pulling strings because he has ultimately wanted to destroy and break this system that Bayaz has been creating since the beginning of the Blade itself. We knew the whole way through the first Law series that Bayaz was pulling strings, manipulating people behind the sort of veil that is Valen and Bulk. He's been outsmarted. Glokta defeats him because at the end of the first Law trilogy, Bayaz employs Glokta and puts him as Archlector and kind of wants to keep an eye on him. But after all these years, it turns out that Glokta has actually been pulling strings of his own in the more recent years and has a greater plan and just managed to outwit Bayaz. And I just absolutely love that. Oh, my Glokta. Such a special character. I adore him. Good old Styx. I knew he'd come back. I started to see it coming, but I wish I'd caught on earlier, but that was a fantastic reveal. That was so good. It turns out that, so there was this huge reveal, and then we had a moment where Yoru Sulfur makes an appearance to kind of like step in for Bayaz at the last moment and try to end Glokta and end Savine and end all of this. Also, Savine, just so you know, Savine is like really upset about all this. She's not happy about this reveal at all. But Yoru Sulfur turns up and attacks, and then Zuri and her brothers turn up and defend Glokta and Savine and Ardi because Zuri and her brother are eaters as well as Yoru Sulfur, and they tear like his face apart in a big violent eruption of anger and protect Glokta and Savine and Ardi. And that was good fun. And it turns out that they picked Zuri to be her sort of right-hand woman because she's an eater, because she's so powerful, and it was always meant to protect her. So that was really cool. That was really clever. Savine has gone on such a journey with this one, and again it's one of those full circle moments where she's so much like her father. She's so controlling, so manipulative, so powerful, so clever, so conniving, because she's a very manipulative and controlling character, and she's kind of gone full circle as well. So now, because of what Glokta and Ardi have been able to achieve, Savine is now able to have a position of power, and she's back in charge again. She is able to remain with Leo in a very unhappy relationship, but ultimately she is able to control Leo. She is able to hold him in a position where he's unable to do anything for himself, really. She is put into control of the Royal Bank, which is like the new bank that is sort of replacing Valen and Bulk, and all of Bayaz's banks, which means that there's no more power for Bayaz, which I just think that's so interesting. And I think, as I say, it was a real full circle moment of just seeing her have power and influence, lose power and influence, and then regain it again from her father, which I thought was really great. And it's so funny how Joe Abercrombie can make you admire such a corrupt character. Like Savine arguably is not a good character at all. They never are in First Law, but I really admire her. She's a good character. She's super compelling. Yeah, I like her. I like her a lot. She jumped off the page. There's also a moment when Glokta and Savine were having this discussion about sort of the great reveal of Glokta and who he is and as the Weaver. And an interesting moment is where Glokta sort of says, we've removed Bayaz, we're removing him, and we're removing all of that and everything he's done. But then Savine just says, oh, but you're replacing him with yourself, which is, you are replacing him. You're just becoming a new Bayaz. You're just doing what he did. And again, it just sort of goes back to all that being like a full circle moment. And it really made me think that, despite this great change, despite the great change that Glokta has been fighting for and pulling all these strings to achieve, there always ultimately is someone behind it all and someone working towards their own goals, to fulfill their own goals and what they want, not necessarily for the better of all, but for what they want. There's always someone pulling the strings. There's always someone behind it with their own agenda, whether we agree with it or not. Oh, it was so good. Also, just going back to Rika. So Rika, obviously, she handed also over. She knew that She understands that she was the owl that defeated the lamb. She knew her place in the sort of prophecy, and she handed him over. She had no choice but to hand him over, and it was a really bittersweet moment. I think even also just accepted it at that point, but it was really sad, and I think she did have quite a lot of emotion about it and quite a lot of regret, but also just knew that it was her only option. But she handed him over in order to have the North be left alone, and to be able to have the North sort of be free and independent, and for her to be able to run it. So she's Black Rika. She's in charge of the North. There was a moment right at the end of the book where Rika has another vision, and I wrote it down. So she had a vision of a figure who is released through a ring with 13 seals. And then the voice of this vision, I can't remember what the voice said, but the voice that Stephen Pacey used was a very godlike, powerful voice. And I'm wondering if it's one of the prophets, or if it's like Auz, the god that Baez was always talking about. Definitely, he's the sort of like the godlike figure that Baez refers to a lot in the first trilogy, because he's the person that created the laws, including the first law. So I think it might have been him talking to Rika, but then Rika kind of just, I think it sort of shows her that basically, something's still coming, something's still lurking, and Rika doesn't tell anybody. She just ignores that vision, which I thought was really interesting. But what I really like about this is this kind of ambiguity of the ending, where there's kind of like an option for there to be more first law stuff, which I hope is the case. We end up with Clover. Clover is employed now to go and teach people to use swords, and he basically goes to his new place of employment because he's going to train people as a sword master. And he sort of turns up at this village, and a person that is at the village is none other than Baez. Baez is there. Now, I had been wondering where he had been this whole time. I was wondering where we were going to see him again. And Baez is there, and he tells Clover, this is the young lad that you are going to be training. And this young lad has got dark hair. And Clover recognizes him from an earlier scene. So I think this is somebody who is related to Calder, Black Calder. So possibly a son? I think it is. Because if you remember, I mentioned it in the last bit, where Black Rika says to Calder, your Bethod's end line ends with you. And he says, so you don't see everything. Pointing to the fact that there's someone else in Bethod's line. I think Baez has been looking after Calder's son. I'm assuming it must be his son. Again, it's with the ambiguous ending where it just ends there. It just leaves it with Clover going to train what I'm guessing is Calder's heir, but Bethod's heir. But Baez is still pulling strings. So as much as the Great Change was happening, and Valen and Bulk have been destroyed, and so much of Baez's influences and power has been destroyed, he's still lurking. He's still pulling strings. He's still got a plan. And I love the kind of ambiguity to the ending, because everything is kind of all neatly wrapped up. But also there's this potential for more in this world. Or just the fact that, not all of the characters are finished and there's still more. And even if nothing ever came of it, I just love that open-endedness of it. Also a moment where Hildy is there. So Hildy is somebody who's been very close to Orso throughout throughout the books. And Baez is training Hildy in order to sort of work in banks. So Baez still very clearly has a plan. That is it. That is The Age of Madness by Joe Abercrombie. I can't believe I finished it. I've had the best time buddy reading this with Liam. This has just been so much fun. I messaged him this morning saying, I'm so sorry, but I've gone ahead and listened to the end of it because how could I not? It was, guys, it was so good. And this is what I mean. I've gone straight back and just started listening to the First Law trilogy again with the blade itself. Can I just tell you how excited I was when I heard the click, tap, pain, and even just the opening chapters with Logan, when he is with the Shanker in the north and he's running away from his past. And this is the thing that Joe's very good at, is having these full circle moments. You know, Logan starts off running away from his past, and then he finishes off in the last argument of Kings running away from his past. And like also with the hangings and Baez still pulling strings and Glokta, even he has some of these sort of full circle moments where he's manipulating, and Savine going from manipulator to manipulated to manipulator again. I love it. It's so clever. It's so clever. This was absolutely fantastic. I am obsessed. I'm obsessed. So that was it. That was my experience of reading The Wisdom of Crowds, the last book in the Age of Madness trilogy. I can't, if I have any more thoughts, I will share them in another video at some point, but I need to go and process this for a little while, but I just had to give you my thoughts whilst I read it today. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you've been watching these vlogs, these Age of Madness vlogs, or just First Law vlogs that I've been doing in general, I just want to really just say how grateful I am that you have been watching them, because it means the absolute world to me. I have just had the most incredible experience reading these books, and I've really enjoyed vlogging. I know this isn't really, it's just me still sat in front of my camera as per usual, but if you have enjoyed these vlogs, please do let me know. If there is anything else that you would like me to read and vlog my experience for, maybe some standalones would be good rather than a huge series. But if there are any books, any standalones or series that you would really like to see me specifically vlog and focus on that one book or series, then please do let me know in the comments, because I will make sure that I write them down as part of a list of videos to make in the future. So if there are any, please do let me know. Please let me know if you have read the Age of Madness trilogy. Please let me know what your thoughts were. What were your thoughts on the ending? What were your thoughts on the ending? I personally loved it, apart from also, but I totally understand why it was included. But please let me know what your thoughts on the ending were. What were your thoughts? How do you feel? I love the openness of it. I feel like it was closed enough that it was satisfying, but left open enough that it's open to interpretation, or there's potential for future books and series, which, I just love that. That makes me so excited. So yeah, please let me know in the comments below. And please just chat to me. Just chat to me about it in the comments. I would love to have a chat with you down there. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon in another video very soon. Bye.